Okay, so kicking off where we last left off, we made this kind of clone of the Boolean loudness meter just to get used to the UI. If we take a look at the Boolean loudness meter, you can see here now I've scaled our window to the exact pixel size of the width here. And if we look at the height, for example, where the menu is, you can see it's the exact height. I've matched these bars. I've matched as best I can at the minute visually the width of these bars here and here. So it's scaled pretty much one-to-one. I've even matched the title bar, so it's very similar in size and style. They're just all basic movements in size and position, so there's no real need to cover what I've done there. But next up, I thought we'd tackle some part of the UI. I thought we could tackle this kind of volume meter here, because it's probably one of, short of the actual graph here, it's probably the second most complicated part of the UI. So why not just dive in at the deep end and get this done? So thinking this through now, I know what I want to do with this scale, because clearly this is a minus 60 dB volume loudness scale. So that means there's going to be 60 points from top to bottom. And if you look at the gaps between them, I'm pretty sure they've scaled it so that these are relative gaps. So 0 to -3 will be 3 gaps, if you will, like 3 units of scale. 3 to 6 is 3, 3 to 9 is 3, 9 to 18 is a 9, so that should be 9 points. You get the idea. So this will be 5 points, this will be 4 points, and so on. So this is perfect for a grid using relative sizes, the star units, where you can have a proportion. So if you have a grid with 2 stars in, like we have this row here, it has auto, which is sized to fit the content. So top and bottom are sized to fit content. And then the star simply says take all available remaining space. If we had 2 rows that were stars, so say the bottom 2, these 2 will take all the remaining space and then divide it by 2 stars. So if we then did a proportion, like 2 star and 1 star, it's just the same as doing 1, it's just implied. You can see this will be 1 unit and this will be 2. So the idea is this will be a grid with a bunch of rows with star units that relate to the gap we want between to form this kind of exact spacing that will also scale as we scale the UI. And then in terms of columns, because this sort of bar in the middle is free floating, you can see it's nice and easily free floating from these indicator bars. So this one could just be a column where the span is the entire grid. So it turns into effectively a single area that's 100% the height. So it's quite complicated, but I've got an idea in my head how we're going to do it, and you'll see it kind of come together. These bottom 2 parts here, the text and the buttons, we'll just simply chuck in a parent grid where the first grid will be sort of here and then within here. So parent grid will have 3 rows like this. This will be a star to take the remaining space, and these 2 will be auto. And then the subgrid in here, every single one of these lines will be a grid with a certain star value to take up each dividing line, if you will. Every time there's a number, the size of that will kind of grow to fill the exact gaps, if that makes sense. That's my train of thought on how we'll do this. But with that in mind, let's just get to doing some code and see this come together. So one thing I want to do is just style the background color to match this app as well. Then I can nick this color from here. You can see it's already in here. So let's just remove the rectangle, which is just a fill of color, and let's change this now to a grid. The width wants to be the same. We're just going to change this to a grid, and the autocomplete doesn't update this closing tag. That's now the same color as this, which is what we want. And then, as I mentioned, this grid wants 3 grids inside of it, or the row definitions are 3 rows, star, auto, auto. And the content inside, the first one is going to be the new grid with all the relative positions. But the row for this row is 0. The next one could be a stack panel. Well, to be honest, the next one can just be a label for now. That's literally all it is. And it says the word LUFS, and that will be in grid row 1. Let's just chuck the grid row definitions here as well, which is fill remaining space, auto and auto. And the last one is 2 buttons. So for now, we can chuck a stack panel in with 2 buttons for now for quickness. Stack panel grid.row is 2. And in here can be a button A and a button B. And let's just define the column again there so it's not implied. And this should be updating this UI, so I'm suspecting something's wrong already as to why it's not updating the UI. Oh no, it is updating the UI. It's just that I haven't noticed it's down here because it's black by default. So now we want to style this to be white text. We could... Where's the text gone? There. We could just type in directly, foreground white, and then font size, I don't know, 20 maybe. That'll look about right. Yeah, looks about right. And horizontal alignment center. So that'll do for that one for now. Probably want some margin on the top and bottom, about 5, to separate it from the buttons. And then the stack panel, similarly, we want orientation to be horizontal. We want the horizontal alignment to be centered. And the same in here, we want the buttons to have, now because we've got 2 buttons and we want them styled the same, I haven't even had a look how we actually do styling in Avalonia. Styling. Styles in Avalonia are used as shared properties between styles. Avalonia style can be thought of as a mix of CSS and WPF. Ah, cool, so it's slightly different. It uses a selector and a collection of setters. Oh, cool, yes, it is literally like a WPF style, but we've got this kind of selector, which is a CSS style. Text block, class is H1, cool. Okay, so place it on the window, start with that, see if we can get this working. In the window, put some style in. Let's change this to say label. I don't know what this is going to do. Doesn't seem to be doing anything. We've got some labels, yep. Got some fonts. Or have all of them got font sizes at the minute? I think every single label we have defines a font size. Let's just chuck in a font, or a label rather in here. Test. You can just about see down there. So this looks like it is working. Yeah, so that test one is changing. Setter, property, foreground, value, white. Yep, so you can see this style is now controlling this label, wherever it's gone, this label. But if you have labels and you set the properties on them directly, that overrides the style. That's quite cool. The only thing is now I don't really want to set the style for every button everywhere because these buttons are different than these. So if we just change this to button, you see it's changing every button to that style. Oh, cool. You actually have hover effects on the UI as well. That's well cool. Yeah, what was I doing? So button, I can't remember what we're trying to do. I just want to make the buttons look a little bit like this. So we need that little blue there. And that will be background. So setter, property, background, value is that. So that sets the buttons. The font size is pretty small. Probably even smaller than that. It's also not bold, we can get rid of that. Okay, that's not far off. Maybe it's 11 or 12. So that's like 12 here. Now, the only thing is we don't want this style applying to all of them. So I'm guessing the way that WPF works and the nature of embedding in XAML, I can almost bet any money we can just cut this style and embed it into the grid here, the stack panel, say. So anything inside the stack panel will get that style. And we'll just have to update the parent type. Yep, and there you go. So now we have a style that is applying to anything inside the stack panel only, but now we can set all the button styles to match. That's quite cool. Now, button A, you'll want the usual, the margin on right only, which I think was that one. Yep. And we want to apply a little bit of style there, probably 10. Actually, quite a big bit of margin. And there you can see that. Now you can see the margins are a lot tighter on this and there's more rounding, so let's fix that. The properties don't have IntelliSense. Oh yeah, they do. I didn't think they had IntelliSense. Corner radius, value, I don't know, 10, 20. If you go higher, does it just not do anything here? So you can just go as large as you want after it's oversized. So if you just want them to be, definitely rounded, you can just set them oversized. So that's fully round. And now the margin wants to be, just set it 0 first. Okay, it's not margin. That hasn't made any difference. Is it padding? Oh yeah, of course it is. What am I on about? Padding. So padding 0 is not right. Padding 5, 6, 7. Probably padding 7 on the left and right. And the top and bottom is less. Maybe the top and bottom a little bit less. I think it's literally like 2 or 3. I think it's about 2. That looks pretty much the same. That'll do for now. The only thing is, obviously, we'd have to do an icon here, which we'll come to another time when we do like SVG graphics or something. And we've obviously got a margin. That margin that I'm going to apply to the whole volume bar area. So I'm going to put a margin on here. And do what? 10. That's going to make it bigger all around. Top and bottom only for now. And then if we line that up, you can see that pretty much lines up perfectly. And that looks very much like that. So all that's really left now, for now at least, is let's get this bar and positioning and styling right so we can see the grid and its kind of proportional sizing. That's the main thing I'm trying to figure out and play with for this specific tutorial, I guess, is understanding the grid layout and what the star really means. So this is a perfect example to show that this is a proportional scale where these lines should be positioned at the proportions they are meaning. So, 18 points, which is 9 points away from this. There should be 9 points in size. That should be 3. That should be 3. And it should all be relative to the overall size as we scale. So it's a really good example of where you would use a grid using these star values. So what we have now is the stack panel there, which is the bottom buttons. So it's inside the volume bar. It is volume bar buttons. The second row there, the middle row, is LUPS label, which to be honest, we could, it's easy enough to do that way. I'm going to say you can do it with just a stack panel, but that width being 100, so it consumes all the width and then stacks below maybe, or different ways of doing it, but might as well use what we've got. We've already got a grid, chuck an extra row in. And then this one is the volume meter. Volume meter gauge. So this is the important one where we need to set up the row definitions. So in row definitions, it's going to be a bunch of stars with different values. So we just count what's going on here. So we have 1 row, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. and we'd have the 11th row. Even though there's nothing written here, this is minus 60, but that wants to be the extra row. So we'd have 11 stars. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11. So we have the rows now. Let's chuck the content in. So I think each row can just be, for now, yeah, this is going to have to grow after, but for now let's just do grid.row, chuck them in the rows. And the first one, we can just do this with plain text. So 0, and then this is not a minus, this will be an EM dash. So instead of a hyphen, so if we do 0, instead of just a hyphen on the keyboard, which is short, some people just do double hyphens to try and make them longer. On Mac, at least, if you hold Shift, Option, and do the minus, you'll get a slightly longer minus, and this is called an EM dash. So that's a regular, that's a long. So we want the long EM dash. If you're not sure how to get that, just pull up Google, and you could just say, find somewhere it's written normally. It's already typed in, like, for example, in that part of the text. Just click in, find somewhere it's used like there, and copy and paste that symbol in. But that, you can see we've got 0 and hyphen. Let's just style this now. So let's see if I can do this without copy paste this time. Grid.styles, then was it style? Yeah, I forgot already. Property maybe? Style. Nope. What was it? Selector. So it's a selector, and we want it for label. And this is where I still aren't used to the way. That's it, you have to press. No. I'm not used to Rider's autocomplete at all. Let me just try and figure out what it is. Style, setters, label. And then how do we now finish the style tag? If we close, it doesn't finish it for us. It just wants to insert design time alias. If we put a forward slash, it closes that. I don't think there's any default way to, once you've started typing, maybe somebody that uses Rider more than I've used it for a few seconds can kind of show me how the hell you'd autocomplete this nicer than having to do that and then do that. It seems like a lot of work to just close a tag, whereas in Visual Studio, you just close and press enter and it would actually finish and not do a stupid designer open style thing like that. That's quite annoying. Anyway, rant over. Why is that grey now? Thought my rant was over. Have I done that right? Oh, selector, not setter. There we go. That's why I like to type things out after you've copy and pasted once, because it forces you to gain a bit of memory on remembering what you're typing. So this is the first time I've ever used styles, so I'm forcing myself to try and remember what was typed. This will now be a setter, property, yep, label, foreground, value, white. So there you go, now that 0's changed to white. I don't think we need to do anything else. But the font size is a little bit large. So setter, property, font size, value 10. That was a good guess. That looks a bit small. Maybe 12. Yeah, 12 looks good. So now we have the styles for all the labels. We can go ahead and copy this 10 more times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And change the rows. The last one wants to be blank. And then going down the list, we have -3, -6, -9. -3, -6, -9, -18, -23, 27, 36, -23, 27, -36. Then you got -45 and -54. So that now has given us a layout, and it's all in the same percentage because all these stars are the same. So now the magic will come. In order to make these the same proportions, we simply have to work out the difference between the numbers. So out of a total of 60. So the first one, 0, the gap between 0 and minus 3 is 3. So we'll put in the first row 3 star. Then the gap between 3 and 6 is 3. The gap between 6 and 9 is 3. The gap between 9 and 18 is 9. The gap between 18 and 23 is 5. The gap between 23 and 27 is 4. The gap between, can't see them numbers now, 27 and 36 is 9. 36 and 45 is 9. And 45 and 54 is 9. So the next 3 are 9. And then the gap between 54 and 60, which is what this represents here, is 6. And then the last one, simply, you can either do auto to just take up the remaining space. So whatever was typed in here would just take up the space desired. And because there's nothing in there, it takes up no space. It just acts as the natural bottom line. So with that, we should see that spacing, look at that, lines up absolutely pixel perfect with this bar. So you can see that's working. We've got an alignment issue here, the left aligned, not right aligned. So I don't know whether in every label we can do this, just the way this is currently working. This will probably work. Right aligned. Yep, cool. So they're all right aligned. And don't worry about them aligning right to the edge here, because what we will be doing is adding 3 columns to this grid. So in fact, if we break that to a new line, break that to a new line, and do column definitions, and what we're going to do for now. I really thought that far ahead. So this will be one column. This line will be another column. This arrow is another column, and this centerpiece is another column. And I don't know what to do about this bar either side that kind of floats. I think that naturally wants to be, I don't know, it can be its own column again. Just a bit of a strange drawing. And the position's going to be floating. So I'm going to group that kind of outer bar with this progressive bar here. I'm not sure how we're going to do that bar yet. So we're going to have one column here, one for the main bar with all the other little visuals on it, one for these lines, and one for this arrow that's floating. So we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 columns, and we're going to, I think, just horizontally center the grid as a whole. And actually, what will we do? I'm just trying to think of the scaling mode of this. We're going to set the width of this bar because that's what we want to keep. And then we'll auto size the text, and we'll just let this arrow, I guess, take the remaining space, maybe. So that'll mean we want auto, star, auto, auto. But then is that going to center? Yes, just start with that. So auto, star, auto, auto. Let's start with that. And now you can see we have the bar aligning over this way, which is similar to this. We have no margin, however, for left and right at the minute. So there's margin for left and right only, just so it doesn't squish right against the edge. Because that's a margin, has that oversized our bar? No, it hasn't. That's cool. And what else have we got? So these are all by default showing in column grid 0. Grid.column 0. I'm just going to copy that. And I reckon copy from there. Can you hold Alt and select? Yeah, you can. Nice. Paste in. There we go. So they're all column 0, and then the rows all the way down. We can do basically a copy of all that. And then we can select here with Alt, click in, change that to column 0, 1, column 2. There we go, goes over to there. Delete the numbers, it's just hyphens on that side. And then we have the final one, which is going to have the arrow in this side, which we might as well just make the row. I've got absolutely no idea what we're going to do there at the minute. I'm thinking because this is just a free moving arrow, we can make the arrow inside and then position this. And was it canvas? Yeah, so a canvas will probably work well in this respect. Let's go to the layout controls. Panel, oh, there we go, layouts. Panel canvas, dock panel, it's definitely not a dock, it's not a grid, not a relative, not a wrap. Panel, yeah, I think it's a canvas we want. So this will be a canvas, and I reckon also this will be a canvas where these lines are just positioned inside of it in this bar. What we could have with this bar, see how it goes red above this line? We could actually have a white rectangle drawn up to here, a red rectangle drawn up to here, perfectly there and all the time, and then actually draw a rectangle the same colour as the background that grows down to cover the other two. That's probably what we'll do to make that effect, as opposed to trying to draw a white rectangle and then scaling a red and getting all messy. So that probably wants to be a canvas, and that wants to be a canvas with the elements inside. So we want two canvases. This one's the end one, which will be grid dot column 0, 1, 2, 3. So this is the one with the arrow in. And grid dot row wants to be, it's in every row. So this one's a row span. Yep, row span of 11. And I guess rectangle fill fill equals red, just to see something. We've got to set the width because this is auto, so width of 10, 20 for now, 15, 40, 30. I think 20 is about right. We've got nothing showing at the minute. Grid.row can start at 0, I guess. The height of this canvas, I've got no idea. Can we see it? So there's the canvas. That arrow needs to go all the way up to the 0 and down to there. So that's got enough room. It looks pretty much bang on, to be honest. So now the only thing is, I know this is going to be an arrow, but let's just make this rectangle width of 10, height of 10 for now, just to represent a bit bigger actually, 20, 20. That'll represent our kind of arrow when we come to draw the arrow, and it can now be white. So this will be our arrow. And then can we position this? Obviously you can, that's the point of canvas. I just can't remember how. We haven't used them yet, so I have absolutely no memory of what to do yet. Canvas.left, canvas.top. So we should be able to just set canvas.top here. And 0 is the very top, which would actually align perfectly with that line if it was 0. And I think that's just pure coincidence, to be honest, because the height of this text happens to line up with the center, but that means our offset is 0. If we did 10, it moves down 10. Now the only thing is there, this isn't relative, which is not good. That will be a problem because we need a relative position here to be a percentage of the overall position. So we could bind to it and figure out the height of this grid and set it that way. But we might have to put some consideration into how to get this position to change relative to the grid. So if we just run this a moment, I'll show you what I mean. So you can see here now, if we scale this, this all scales proportionally, which is what we want. But if we set the arrow's position to say 100, then that is going to stay at exactly 100 and not scale proportionally. So we might have to do something different with this. But if anybody knows a way to get this a proportional value, or whether the Avalonian team can make this have support, that'd be great. But for now, we'll leave that as is. We know that's something to tackle. We have the indicator that would be an arrow, And then the next part is getting this graph in here now. So we just want to, I'm going to put them in order. You don't have to, but I like things to be in the order they would actually appear visually as well, which makes a bit more sense. And this will be the volume bar. This will be in row 1. And, sorry, row 0. It'll be in column 1. There we go. Row spans all of it. And the bar inside, we mentioned, again, this is where we need the relative, though, to go down to there. We could have a grid relative to that, and that overlay. Yeah, so we could make another grid that's relative to hit bang on 23 inside of this canvas. So if we do a grid with a row definitions of 23 star, and then the total is 60, so that would be 37 stars left. And that grid. Inside the grid, we would want 2 rectangles. In fact, let's just cut that rectangle place in. Fill will be, I don't think it's red, but it's kind of like a salmon colour, so let's just screenshot that. Fill that with that salmony colour. The width 20 is fine for now. The height is not set. Oh, is this rectangle not going to be the thing either? Actually, let's do this the other way around. The canvas won't be filling, I'm guessing. So the canvas fills. And yeah, the grid won't fill because it's inside of a canvas, which doesn't pass the size down. So for quickness, why don't we just flip this around first and have a grid wrapping everything else. Probably change that to a rectangle now. Let's just check if background red fills. All them properties want to go on this grid. Yeah, so now that fills that with the red, which is what we want. In the sense of just I'm testing that the grid is full height. So the grid's full height, the border can now be a rectangle, and the grid.row will be 0. And then the fill will be that, and the width will be 20. There we go. That's what we wanted. So now we have that filling with a specific size. You can see now the offset, though. We will need an offset that slightly matches the natural text lines. This is going to be, so long as the label size stays consistent and where it is, this nudge will move it down that bar slightly. So for that, what can we do? Because that's technically the right proportion. Just do row span 2 for the minute. And that goes to the bottom. We can't see the bottom because we have nothing. Let's just put a line in. So you can see the bottom's also overshooting by, well, actually, it's only overshooting if you put something in. So the bottom doesn't matter too much because you can't see. The top I would visually want to improve, though. So we'll just nudge it down a bit. So I think that... can you do a padding at the top? No? Can you do a margin? Yep, so we can do... top is there. Do 5, 0, 0. Cool. Now let's just nudge. There we go. So we nudge that down with a little bit of a margin. So that 8 points is the midway between this font size, and the font size is 12. So I'm guessing it actually wants to be 6 points to be exact, depending on how it's scaling, how well it's scaling. No, I would say it is 8. So that's that anyway, that gets that bar perfect. Next up, we want another rectangle in the next row down, which will fill this gap. And we don't want any margins on this one. The fill wants to be white. And there's the kind of bar. And there's actually the problem. You need the nudge down. So what are we going to do there? We need to move it down, not necessarily margin it down. Or can you do a bottom of -8 to compensate? I have no idea. Yeah, you can do a -8. So that means this will need a margin as well of, it is a little bit hackish, but it's working for now. We can maybe improve this after. We want, so we'll actually have to have exactly the same margins. That will be 0, that will be -8. Why is that complaining at me? There we go, and to be honest, the bottom doesn't need it. There we go, so we just want the top. That gets us the bar that should look exactly like where we want the points, and it will scale because it's all relative at the minute still. So this bar with the 23 should line up constantly with the 23. So that's a progressive bar now. You can see we really need to kind of handle, in fact, there's another slight issue there. See how this doesn't fit in here with the text? I think the labels have got padding on them naturally. So let's just improve that. Setter property padding value 0. I presume that's going to remove that white space that didn't allow it to collapse as far. There we go, much better. So now they can collapse really close. But you can see we need like a minimum size that we could always set here to prevent this from happening, because at the minute we can collapse it to nothing. So we probably want to set a minimum height. But for now, let's just ignore that bit. The main importance is the scales. So the last thing is to cover this with a moving bar, which is this moving bar. Add these little bracketing features and add this arrow. So I think all them really are a separate kind of topic. The way I want to handle this progressive moving bar and the percentages of the scale. One, we need to think about and discuss. So jump on our Discord channel if you want to discuss potential ways of cracking this. And two, this I doubt will be a grid, which is the point of this kind of lesson I'm trying to teach at the minute, is to understand the importance of these row definitions and the star values. So I don't want to kind of mix that lesson in with one that's to do with sort of a relative position over a height. That's going to be a completely different kind of lesson. So I'll stop this one here, but hopefully you can see already how we've got the most complicated part of a UI. And if you see, we align this over the top of here and go between them, you can see how close they are. So you can see they are pretty much exactly the same in terms of overall layout. You can see here the position though. We can move things about a little bit. We can sort of nudge this up if we wanted. But overall, we do side by side. They are pretty damn accurate. And it's not really about making it exactly pixel perfect. I actually prefer our layout than this layout. Now you see it, ours is actually more uniform based on margins being uniform. This one's just random and a bit high. But I think that's close enough to be the same design, which is what we want. And it's also showing how ridiculously easy this cross-platform UI is becoming thanks to Avalonia. I've not even really looked at how to do anything there, but I'll look up how to do styles and then make guesses again of how they would work. It's just so intuitive and so natural that this UI design is, again, it's enjoyable and fun. It makes you want to make the UI good. So the next challenge will be figuring out this kind of bouncing, scalable rectangle. So I know we can do it by simply chucking in another rectangle that overlays this other rectangle. That's not a problem. The main thing is thinking about how to do the position of that rectangle or the height of that rectangle. that is in accordance with the overall height. But considering that's going to be bound in code behind to some real audio, it will probably be as simple as just binding it to a value, and that value literally reads this grid's current height and sets it to a percentage of that height. But I'd prefer something to be a little bit more definable in XAML, where it can be, 50% of the height. So if we're scaling and the audio doesn't update the UI, it doesn't go out of sync while scaling, because that'll be a little bit glitchy. But again, any discussions on this, jump on Discord, and I push all these changes now to the github.com/angel6/YouTube repository. And you can see in here we have Avalonia, and then here's the code. So that's where we'll be working through each of these lessons, and you can pull the code down if you want to just run along with me, or you can write your own. So that's it for this one. I hope you've had fun doing this UI. Any kind of feedback or comments, just jump on our Discord or leave a comment in this video, and I'll get back to all of you. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.